The blizzard came like a living thing that night, hungry and relentless. Wind screamed through the gaps in the lean-to's walls, each gust sharp as broken glass. 25 degrees below zero and falling. Ilara Morgan huddled in the corner of her 8 by 6 foot shelter, wrapped in horse blankets that reeked of mold and animal sweat. 18 years old, and she had learned to make herself small, invisible. A ghost in the Ridgecrest-packed territory, existing in the spaces between other people's lives. Her breath came out in white clouds. The fire had died an hour ago. She had burned the last of her wood, keeping warm enough to survive until dawn. Now, with 3 more hours until sunrise, she faced a choice. Freeze here or risk the forbidden forest in the middle of a storm to gather fallen branches. Pack law was clear. No one left the compound after curfew. The ancient forest beyond the fence belonged to something older than wolves, older than memory. But the cold was immediate. The cold was now. And Ilara had survived 18 winters by trusting her instincts over rules made by people who would never notice if she died. She stood, her joints stiff and aching, pulled an old scarf around her face, covering the silver hair she kept perpetually smudged with ash to avoid attention. Silver hair marked her as different, and different was dangerous when you had no family, no protection, no value beyond the floors you scrubbed and the ashes you hauled. The violet eyes were harder to hide. People said they were a curse, a sign of bad luck. Ilara had stopped looking in mirrors years ago. She pushed open the lean-to door. The wind hit her like a fist, stealing the air from her lungs. Snow came down in sheets 3 feet deep already and still falling. The forest loomed ahead, a wall of black against the gray night sky. Just a few branches, she told herself. Just enough to make it through. She walked into the storm. The cold was absolute. It lived in her bones, in her blood, in the spaces between her thoughts. Each step forward required a negotiation with her body, a promise that warmth waited somewhere ahead if she could just keep moving. The forest swallowed her. Ancient pines rose like cathedral spires, their branches heavy with snow. 200 years old, some of them. They had been here before the packs, before the territories, before the wars that carved up the Rockies into kingdoms of tooth and claw. Ilara bent to gather a fallen branch. Her fingers were numb inside her threadbare gloves. She needed 10, maybe 12 branches, enough to last until morning. That was when she heard it. A sound that did not belong to wind or wolves or the settling of snow-laden trees. A thin, desperate sound. The cry of something small and alive and dying. Ilara froze, her heart hammered against her ribs. No one leaves things alive out here, she thought. Not in this cold, not in this storm. But the sound came again. A baby's cry, weak and fading. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back. Whatever was out there, it was not her problem. She had enough trouble keeping herself alive. But her feet were already moving, running toward the sound branches forgotten. "Where are you?" she called, but the wind stole her voice. "Where are you?" The cry pulled her deeper into the forest, left toward a massive oak tree with branches like black claws reaching for the sky. She crashed through a snowbank and fell to her knees in a small clearing. There, half buried in white, was a wicker basket. Ilara's hands shook as she brushed away the snow. The basket was simple, rustic, the kind used for market goods or laundry. Inside, wrapped in a blue wool blanket, already stiff with ice, was a baby girl. The shock of it paralyzed Ilara for 3 full seconds. Someone had left an infant here, left her to die in the storm alone and frozen. The baby's face was mottled purple and blue, her delicate skin burned by the brutal cold. Her eyes were closed, long eyelashes covered in frost like tiny crystals. She had stopped crying. The silence was worse than any scream. "No," Ilara whispered. "No, no, no. You will not die out here." She ripped off her gloves. Her hands were red and raw, but she needed to feel skin, needed to know if there was still warmth, still life. She touched the baby's cheek, cold as marble, cold as death. "Please," Ilara begged the moon that never answered her prayers. "Please." She did not think about the consequences. Did not think that if they found her with a dead baby, they would call it murder. She thought only that this child should not die alone in the snow, surrounded by nothing but wind and darkness. Ilara opened her coat, exposing her own chest to the biting wind. She lifted the tiny frozen body from the basket and nestled her against her skin over her heart. The cold of the baby's body burned worse than fire. Ilara wrapped them both in her coat, holding the child as close as she could. "I have got you," she murmured, swaying in the snow. "I have got you. Wake up. Come on, little one. Wake up." And then it happened. The moment the baby's skin touched the skin of Ilara's chest directly over her heart, a searing pain tore through her left wrist. Not pain, like someone had pressed a white-hot brand directly into her flesh. Alara screamed. The sound was lost in the storm. The smell of ozone and burnt magic filled the frozen air. Her wrist felt like it was being carved open, burned, marked by something far beyond her understanding. "What is this?" she gasped, trying to look at her arm, but the pain was blinding, all-consuming. And then she felt it, a heartbeat against her chest. Fast, strong, alive. Alara looked down. The baby had opened her eyes. They were not the milky, vague eyes of a newborn. They were golden, liquid amber, glowing with an internal light that cut through the darkness of the forest. Intelligent eyes, powerful eyes, the eyes of an alpha predator. The purple color was draining from the baby's face before Alara's eyes replaced by healthy pink, as if the fire burning in Alara's wrist was fueling the child's life force. The baby looked at Alara, really looked at her deep into her soul, and stopped trembling. Alara forced herself to look at her wrist where the pain had shifted from agony to a constant warm throbbing. She pushed back her ragged sleeve with shaking fingers. On the pale skin of her inner wrist, where there had been nothing but blue veins and dirt, there was now a mark. Black and gold. Perfect. Intricate. A wolf howling at a crowned moon. The air left Alara's lungs. She knew that symbol. Everyone on the continent knew it. It was the crest of the royal house of the north. The crest of King Marcus Blackthorn, the supreme alpha. The man they said had gone mad with grief and rage after his wife and daughter disappeared 3 months ago. Alara looked at the baby at those impossible golden eyes. "You are her," she whispered, terror and reverence mixing in her voice. "You are Princess Aurora, the lost heir." The baby blinked slowly. A tiny warm hand reached out from the blanket and grabbed Alara's finger. The touch sent another wave of heat through her body, not pain this time, but connection. Pure, absolute, unbreakable. Alara knew in that moment that her life had just changed forever. The invisible girl, the ghost, the Omega with no value, had just been marked by the king's magic. Bound to his daughter, chosen by something far older than pack law. She had to get out of the forest, had to get Aurora to safety. But where if she went back to her lean-to, the baby would freeze. If she went to the village, someone might steal Aurora for the reward, or worse, kill them both to hide the evidence. The only option was the pack house. Alpha Philip commanded this territory. He was greedy, cruel, a man who ruled through fear and bribes. But he feared King Marcus more than anything. He would know he could not touch the air. Alara stood, her legs trembling under the weight of revelation and cold. She tucked Aurora's head under her chin, shielding her with every inch of her body. "Hold tight, Luna," she told the baby, using the nickname that came to her like a gift. "We are going to find your father." The run back was a blur of adrenaline and terror. Alara no longer felt the cold. The mark on her wrist radiated warmth, a magical furnace that kept her body moving even when her muscles screamed for rest. She reached the gates of the pack house breathless. The compound sprawled across 10 acres, a fortress of wood and stone built into the mountainside. Torches burned along the walls, casting orange light across the snow. Alara pounded on the heavy wooden gate with her free fist. "Open up," she yelled. "For the moon's sake, open up." A window opened in the guardhouse. A man looked down, his face twisted with annoyance. "Who is yelling at this hour?" "Oh, it is you, the stable rat. Go away before I release the dogs. I have something you need to see." Alara shouted, her voice stronger than she had ever heard it. "Call Alpha Philip, now. The Alpha is dining. He does not have time for your nonsense." Just then Aurora moved inside Alara's coat. The baby did not cry. She made a sound, a growl. Small, yes, coming from an infant throat, but carrying such primal authority that the hair on the back of Alara's neck stood straight up. The guard above the gate choked on his words. The guard dogs in the courtyard, which had started barking at the commotion, instantly fell silent. They dropped to the ground, bellies flat, whimpering in submission. The gate opened, not because the guard wanted to, because he was terrified. Alara walked into the courtyard head high. For the first time in her life, she was not invisible. Alpha Philip strode out of the main house, wiping his mouth with a napkin, his face red with wine and irritation. He was a thick man in his 50s, broad and scarred, wearing his authority like armor. "What is the meaning of this?" he snarled, descending the steps toward her. "Who dares interrupt my meal?" He stopped when he saw Alara, a dirty servant girl standing in the middle of his courtyard in a blizzard, holding something against her chest like it was made of gold. "Show me what you stole, girl," he demanded. "If it is food, I will have your hand cut off." "I stole nothing," Alara said, holding her ground. "I found her, in the forest. She was dying." She opened her coat just enough to reveal Aurora's face, those golden eyes fixed on Philip with unsettling intensity. The Alpha, a 40-year veteran of pack wars and territorial disputes, took a step back. His face went pale. Those eyes, he whispered. It cannot be. They said she was dead. Greed replaced the shock on his face almost instantly. He saw the opportunity, the reward, the favor of the king, the political leverage, the princess he breathed. Give her to me, girl, now. You are not worthy to hold such a treasure. He reached out with his thick hands, moving to grab Aurora from Alara's arms. Every instinct in Alara's body screamed. Danger, threat, predator. No, she said. She needs warmth. Milk, not your hands. You dare disobey me. Philip snarled, his face contorting with rage. He lunged forward too fast for a man his size. I will take her and throw you to the wolves for your insolence. He grabbed Alara's left arm, trying to pull Aurora away. But he grabbed the marked arm. The moment his skin touched the mark, there was a flash of light. Bright, blinding. The smell of burning flesh filled the courtyard. Philip screamed. He was thrown backward as if he had grabbed a live electrical wire. He fell in the snow, clutching his hand, which was red and blistered. Alara stood frozen, stunned. Her coat sleeve had ridden up during the struggle. The royal mark was exposed, glowing with golden light that cut through the darkness. The wolf and the crowned moon, burning on her skin like a warning beacon. Philip stared at the mark from where he lay in the snow. Pure terror flooded his eyes. The king's mark, he stammered, scrambling backward through the snow like a crab. You have been marked. The bond, the ancient magic. The guards around the courtyard lowered their weapons, looking from Alara Bar to their fallen Alpha. They knew what the mark meant. Everyone knew the old legends. The bonding mark, the magic that chose who would protect the royal bloodline. It was not a choice the king made. It was a choice the magic made. And once chosen, the bearer was untouchable. To harm them was to invoke the wrath of forces older than the packs themselves. Do not touch her, Philip screamed at his men, his voice hysterical. If you touch her, the king's magic will kill us all. She is bonded, protected. Alara looked at the mark, then at Philip cowering in the snow. She felt power rushing through her veins, a strange and wonderful heat coming from Aurora in her arms and the mark on her wrist. For 18 years, she had been invisible, worthless, nothing. Now she was dangerous. I want to send a message to King Marcus, Alara said, her voice clear and cold in the night air. Tell him his daughter is alive. Tell him I am waiting. Philip nodded frantically, still on the ground. Immediately. Of course, he struggled to his feet, keeping his distance. Bring the best carriage. Prepare messengers. He looked at Alara with a mixture of fear and calculation. Come inside, please. We will accommodate you properly. No one will hurt you. I swear it. Alara walked toward the pack house. Not through the back door where servants entered to scrub floors. Through the front door, the main entrance, where alphas and honored guests walked. With every step, she felt the weight of destiny settling on her shoulders. She had saved the king's daughter. She carried his mark. Her old life had ended the moment she entered that forest. What began now was something far more terrifying and far more powerful. She looked down at Aurora, who had fallen asleep against her chest, safe in the warmth the mark generated. What have we done, little one, Alara whispered. But deep down she knew. They had started a war, and the king was coming. The journey north was a study in contrasts. Terror wrapped in velvet, luxury shadowed by fear. Alpha Philip, terrified of King Marcus's wrath, spared no expense. Alara was installed in an armored carriage lined with bear furs so thick she sank into them like a cloud. Magical heaters sat beneath the seats, warming the interior to a comfortable temperature, even as the storm continued to rage outside. At every stop, servants brought hot food in silver containers and fresh goat's milk for Aurora. But despite the comfort, Alara could not relax. Every jolt of the wheels on the frozen road made her arms tighten around the baby. Her heart raced with every creak of the carriage, every distant sound that might be an attack. She knew what waited at the end of this road. The wolf of the north, the man they said had decimated entire armies with his bare hands. The king who had lost his mind to grief, and she was carrying his heart. Aurora slept most of the time, as if recovering from her near death in the forest. When she woke, those golden eyes followed Alara with unnerving intelligence. She did not cry. She watched, learned. Sometimes she would reach out with her tiny hand and touch the mark on Alara's wrist, and when she did, the throbbing warmth would shift to something softer, almost like a purr of contentment. You know, Alara whispered to her in the darkness of the carriage on the second night, you know we are going to him. The journey lasted 2 full days, 500 miles through some of the most unforgiving terrain in the Rockies. The landscape changed as they traveled north. Dense forest gave way to mountains of pure ice-sharp peaks that tore at the gray sky like the fangs of some ancient beast. When they finally arrived, the ice fortress looked like something from a nightmare-given form. It was massive, built from black volcanic stone that contrasted violently with the eternal snow surrounding it. Pointed towers rose 300 feet into the air, piercing the clouds. Walls so high the top disappeared into mist. But what struck Alara most was the silence. There was no bustle of an active court, no sounds of training warriors or merchants hawking goods. There was only a heavy, mournful quiet. Black and gold flags hung motionless along the walls, frozen at half-mast. It was a tomb for a queen and princess everyone believed were dead. The carriage stopped in the main courtyard. The sound of the wheels on ice was the only noise. Alara looked out the window. 800 guards lined up in perfect formation, motionless as statues. Their black armor gleamed under the weak light of torches, and at the top of the main staircase he waited. King Marcus Blackthorn. He wore no crown. He did not need one. Authority radiated from him like heat waves. He was tall, easily 6.5 feet, with shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of kingdoms. He wore black furs and battle leather, his face hard and marked by old scars. Dark stubble covered his jawline. His eyes were shadowed, hollowed by grief and sleepless nights. But it was the eyes themselves that held Alara frozen. Amber, identical to Aurora's, burning with a mixture of desperate hope and murderous fury. The carriage door opened. A guard, his hand trembling, offered assistance. Alara took a deep breath, adjusted Aurora in her arms, and stepped down into the frozen courtyard. The moment her feet touched the stone ground, Marcus moved. It was not a walk, it was a charge. He descended the stairs like an avalanche too fast for a man his size, each step shaking the ground. The guards instinctively backed away. Alara wanted to retreat, her legs locked. Her survival instincts screamed at her to run, but she held her ground, clutching Aurora tighter. Marcus stopped 3 feet from her. His scent hit her like a physical force. Storm, deep forest, blood and steel. The scent of an apex predator at the height of his power. He did not look at Alara. His eyes were fixed on the bundle in her arms, on the small face barely visible beneath the furs. "Show me," he growled. The voice was raw, rough, as if it had not been used for speaking in months, only for howling orders or screaming in rage. Alara's hands shook as she pulled back the fur blanket covering Aurora's face. The baby blinked against the torchlight. She saw the massive man in front of her and smiled. Marcus made a sound that was not human. It was a broken sob torn from the depths of his soul. He fell to his knees in the dirty snow. This king who commanded thousands, this warrior who had never been defeated. His large hands reached out, shaking violently. "Luna," he whispered. "My moon. My life." He touched Aurora's face with one finger so gently it seemed impossible, coming from hands that size. Hands that could crush bone. Hands that had ended lives. Now trembling as they touched his daughter. Aurora grasped his finger in her tiny fist. Marcus collapsed. He rested his forehead against his daughter's shoulder, and dry sobs shook his massive frame. The king was crying, and the entire courtyard held its breath, 800 warriors witnessing the breaking and rebuilding of their leader. Alara stood there, holding his world, feeling his tears wet Aurora's blanket. A wave of emotion rolled off him, so powerful it nearly knocked her to her knees. Relief, love, guilt so deep it had its own weight. Then he raised his head. For the first time he truly saw Alara, saw the thin girl in worn clothes, calloused hands, holding his heir, like she was worth more than kingdoms. His eyes swept over her face, paused at her violet eyes, moved down to her work-roughened hands, and stopped at her wrist. Her coat sleeve had ridden up when she adjusted Aurora for his viewing. The mark was exposed. The wolf and the crowned moon, glowing softly against the darkness. Marcus's eyes widened. His pupils dilated until they nearly swallowed the amber. He inhaled sharply, his nostrils flaring, scenting her. Milk and honey and the wild magic that now bound them. "You," he said. The word came out like an accusation and a prayer at the same time. He stood towering over her. He reached out and took her wrist, not roughly, but firmly. His touch was electric fire, sending shocks up her arms, straight to her heart. He held it gently, as if testing whether the mark was real or some fever dream. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice low, vibrating with alpha command. "I am Alara," she whispered, unable to look away from those burning eyes. "Just Alara. There is no just in this," he said, his thumb tracing the line of the mark with unexpected gentleness. "Royal magic does not mark strangers. It marks destiny." He looked at his guards at the court gathered on the stairs, at the world watching. Still holding her wrist, still holding his daughter and the woman who saved her. "She comes with me," he announced, his voice echoing off the stone walls like thunder. Prepare the Queen's chambers. A murmur of shock rippled through the crowd. An old counselor in gray robes stepped forward, his face twisted with barely concealed disdain. Your Majesty, he said, bowing slightly. Queen Helena's chambers have been sealed for 3 months. No one enters there by your own command. Open them, Marcus ordered, his voice cold as the ice around them. Now, and summon Dr. Silas Crane. I want them both examined immediately. If there is a scratch on either of them, he left the threat hanging in the frozen air, but everyone felt it. And as for the girl's sire, the counselor persisted, looking at Alara with thinly veiled contempt. Where should she be housed? With the servants, Marcus snarled. A low sound that made the horses in the courtyard shy away, eyes rolling white with fear. He pulled Alara closer, wrapping an arm around her shoulders, enveloping her in his cloak, his scent, his protection. No one touches her, he said, his eyes sweeping the assembled court like a blade. No one looks at her wrong. No one breathes near her without my permission. His gaze was a challenge, daring anyone to object. She carries my mark. She saved my daughter. His arm tightened around Alara's shoulders, possessive and absolute. She is mine. The word hung in the air. Mine. It could mean prisoner. It could mean possession. It could mean mate. No one dared ask which. Marcus guided Alara inside the fortress, his hand firm on her shoulder. She walked beside him, Aurora safe in her arms, the mark on her wrist blazing like a torch in the darkness. The interior of the ice fortress was as imposing as the exterior. Vast stone corridors stretched in every direction, ceilings so high they disappeared into shadow. Ancient tapestries depicted battles and coronations, victories and losses, spanning centuries. But despite the grandeur, it felt empty, cold, lifeless. Where are we going? Alara asked, her voice echoing in the silent halls. Where you will both be safe, Marcus replied, without slowing his pace. Where I can watch over you. They reached a pair of double doors made of white oak, 15 feet tall, guarded by 2 soldiers built like mountains. Marcus nodded. The guards opened the doors without a word. The Queen's chambers. They were magnificent but tragic. Furniture covered in white sheets, dust dancing in the rays of light, filtering through high windows. The air smelled of dried flowers and time that had stopped moving. Everything was frozen, preserved, exactly as it had been the day Helena disappeared. Marcus stood in the doorway, his jaw tight. Then he turned and barked orders at the servants who had followed them. Clean this. Light every fire. Bring food, clothes, everything they need. Move. The servants scattered like startled birds. Marcus walked into the room, leading Alara to an enormous canopy bed that could have fit 5 people comfortably. The mattress was thick, covered in silk that had been protected from dust. Put her here, he said softly. Alara laid Aurora down in the center of the bed. The baby looked impossibly small in that vast space, a tiny spark of life in a room designed for royalty. Marcus stood looking at his daughter, his expression softening in a way that transformed his entire face. The brutal king disappeared, leaving only a terrified father. I thought I had lost her forever, he murmured, more to himself than to Alara. I thought my world had ended. He turned to her. They were close. Too close. Alara could feel the heat radiating from his body, could see the flecks of gold in his amber eyes. Thank you, he said, and the words carried the weight of kingdoms. There is no gold in the world, no treasure, no power that can repay what you did. You gave me back my reason for living. I do not want gold, Alara replied, meeting his eyes. I just wanted her to live. Marcus studied her, his gaze intense, as if he was trying to see into her soul. Why, he asked. Why the mark? Why you? I do not know, Alara said honestly. I touched her and it happened. You are an Omega, he said, not cruel, just stating fact. No family scent, no clan markers. How did the royal magic choose you? Perhaps the magic does not care about clans. Alara suggested, a sudden boldness taking hold of her. Perhaps it cares about who was there to hold her when no one else was. Marcus fell silent, fell. He reached out and touched a strand of her silver hair that had escaped from her cap, rubbing it between his fingers. Moon hair, he observed quietly. Violet eyes. You are no ordinary servant, Alara Morgan. His voice dropped lower. We will find out what you are. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. An old man entered, carrying a leather medical bag. He was small, thin, with white hair and spectacles that magnified his sharp eyes. Your Majesty, he said, bowing deeply. I came as quickly as I could. Dr. Silas Crane, Marcus said, stepping back from Alara. Examine the princess first, then her. He pointed at Alara. I want to know everything. Examine the mark. Take blood if you need to. I want answers. The physician nodded and approached Aurora carefully. Marcus did not leave. He moved to the wall, arms crossed over his broad chest, watching like a hawk. His eyes never left Aurora, and when they shifted to Alara, the intensity made her skin warm. Doctor. Crane worked efficiently. He listened to Aurora's heart with a stethoscope, checked her breathing, examined her for injuries or frostbite. Aurora tolerated the examination with surprising patience, her golden eyes following the old man's movements. She is healthy, the doctor pronounced, after several minutes. Remarkably so given what she must have endured. No sign of frostbite, no respiratory issues. It is almost as if something protected her during those months she was missing. He turned to Alara, his expression clinical but curious. Your turn, young lady. Let me see that wrist. Alara extended her left arm. The mark was still glowing, softly pulsing with a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. Dr. Crane pulled out a magnifying glass and studied the mark closely. His eyebrows rose higher with each passing second. Extraordinary, he muttered. The detail, the magical resonance. This is not a brand or a tattoo. This is living magic written into your very flesh. He pulled out a small vial and a needle. I need a blood sample, he said. This will only hurt for a moment. Alara did not flinch when the needle pierced her skin. She had endured far worse in her 18 years. The doctor collected the blood, carefully sealing the vial and holding it up to the light. I will need to run tests, he said to Marcus, but I can tell you one thing immediately. This mark is genuine. Ancient bonding magic, the kind that has not been seen in generations. Whoever she is, your majesty, the magic has chosen her. How long for the full results, Marcus demanded. 24 hours for the blood work. Then go, and Silas Marcus added as the doctor headed for the door. Not a word of this to anyone. If this leaks before I am ready, I will know where it came from. The old physician paled slightly. Understood, your majesty. He left quickly, closing the door behind him. The room fell into silence. Servants had worked quickly while the examination happened. The sheets had been removed from furniture. Fires blazed in 3 different hearths, and the air already smelled fresher, warmer. Marcus walked back to the bed where Aurora had fallen asleep, exhausted by the day's events. He stood looking down at her, and Alara saw his hands ball into fists at his sides. I should have protected her, he said quietly. I failed. A father's first duty is to protect his child, and I failed. You did not fail, Alara said. She is alive. You have her back. But I do not know what happened, Marcus replied, turning to face her. 3 months, Alara. 3 months my daughter was missing, and I tore apart half the northern territories looking for her. I executed suspected traitors. I burned villages that might have harbored kidnappers. And all that time she was in a basket in the forest waiting to freeze to death. His voice cracked on the last words. Someone took her, Alara said. Someone wanted her dead. That is not your fault. Then whose fault is it? Marcus demanded, anger and pain mixing in his voice. He paced the room like a caged wolf. My wife vanished the same night, Helena and Aurora both gone. We searched for weeks, found nothing, no bodies, no ransom demands, nothing, just emptiness. He stopped pacing and looked at Alara. And then you appear, an Omega with no family, and moon-blessed blood carrying the royal mark and my daughter. How am I supposed to understand that I cannot give you those answers, Alara said. I can only tell you what I know. I found her dying in the snow. I did not think, I just acted. Marcus studied her for a long moment. Then his expression shifted, softening slightly. You are exhausted. When did you last sleep? Alara tried to remember. 2 days ago, maybe, before the storm. Then sleep, Marcus ordered, but his tone was gentler now. The bed is large enough for you and Aurora. I will have food sent up. He moved toward the connecting door on the far wall. Where are you going? Alara asked. Marcus paused. My chambers are through that door. I am not leaving you unguarded, not until I know who wanted my daughter dead. He looked back at her, and something in his expression made Alara's breath catch. You saved her life, Alara. That makes you the most important person in this fortress, which also makes you a target. With that, he left, leaving the door between their rooms slightly open. Alara looked around the queen's chambers at the luxury that surrounded her, at the sleeping princess on the bed, at the mark glowing on her wrist. 24 hours ago, she had been nobody. Now she was at the center of a mystery that might get her killed. She climbed onto the bed beside Aurora, careful not to disturb her. The baby sighed in her sleep and rolled closer, seeking warmth. Alara wrapped an arm around her protectively. Through the open door, she could hear Marcus pacing in his room, back and forth, a wolf that could not rest. And for the first time in her life, Alara fell asleep not in a lean-to filled with cold and fear, but in a palace with a king standing guard. She dreamed of silver light and wolves that howled at crowned moons. And somewhere in the depths of the fortress, in shadows, Marcus had not yet found traitors, watched and waited for their next move. The first morning in the ice fortress, Alara woke to silence. Not the familiar silence of her lean-to, filled with the sounds of horses and wind through broken walls. This was the silence of stone and power, heavy and absolute. Aurora slept peacefully beside her one tiny fist curled against her cheek. The mark on Alara's wrist had stopped glowing, but it remained warm, a constant presence she could feel with every heartbeat. The connecting door opened. Marcus entered without knocking, carrying a tray of food himself. No servants. He had prepared it with his own hands. "You need to eat," he said, setting the tray on a side table. Bread, cheese, dried meat, and hot tea. Simple food, but more than Alara had eaten in weeks. "Thank you," she said, sitting up carefully so as not to wake Aurora. Marcus pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat. He looked different in the morning light. Still imposing, still dangerous, but the raw grief had been replaced by something sharper. "Focus. Purpose. We need to talk," he said. "About what happens next." Alara took a piece of bread, suddenly aware of how hungry she was. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Start with the forest. Every detail." So Alara told him. The storm, the cry, finding the basket under the oak tree, the moment the mark burned onto her skin. Marcus listened without interrupting, his amber eyes never leaving her face. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "The basket," he finally said. "Did you recognize it? Any markings?" "No, it was plain, old, the kind anyone could have. And the location." "Can you show me on a map?" Alara nodded. "I remember exactly where it was." Marcus stood and walked to a cabinet, pulling out a detailed map of the territory. He spread it across a table and gestured for Alara to join him. She studied the map, tracing the route from the pack house to the forest. "There," she said, pointing to a spot deep in the woods. "Near this oak grove." Marcus's jaw tightened. "That is 3 miles inside the forbidden zone. No one goes there. The magic is too old, too dangerous. Whoever left her knew that territory well. Or they were desperate," Alara suggested. "Or they wanted her to die where no one would find her." Marcus countered, his voice cold. He rolled up the map. "I am sending a team to investigate. If there are track signs, anything, we will find it." A knock at the door interrupted them. A servant entered, bowing low. "Your Majesty, Dr. Crane has returned with the blood test results. Send him in." The old physician entered, carrying a leather folder. His expression was troubled. "Your Majesty," he began, then paused, glancing at Alara. "Perhaps this conversation should be private." "She stays," Marcus said flatly. "Whatever you have to say, she has the right to hear it." Dr. Crane opened the folder, removing several papers covered in notes and diagrams. "Very well, Your Majesty, the results are conclusive and deeply disturbing." He looked at Alara. "You young ladies should not exist." Alara felt her stomach drop. "What does that mean?" "It means your blood carries genetic markers from a lineage that was declared extinct 200 years ago. The House of Silver Moon." Marcus pushed away from the table. "Silver Moon, the warrior priests, the spiritual guardians of the North." Precisely, Dr. Crane confirmed. "They were known for their affinity with moonlight, their abilities in healing and protection magic. They served as advisors to the royal families for centuries. Then they were wiped out in the Great Purge. Everyone was killed," Marcus said quietly. "Every man, woman, and child. The other packs feared their power, feared their influence. So they destroyed them." Dr. Crane nodded gravely. "Or so we believed." He turned to Alara. "You are a direct descendant, pure blood. Somehow your family line survived in hiding for 2 centuries." Alara felt the room spinning. "I am nobody. I was left in a basket at a pack house. I have no family, no history." "Your blood does not lie," Dr. Crane said, "and it explains the mark." He gestured to her wrist. "The royal magic recognized the ancient bloodline. It recognized an equal. That is why you were chosen. If the other packs discover this," Marcus said, his mind already racing ahead, "there will be war. Some will want to worship her as a relic of the old ways. Others will want her dead to finish what their ancestors started." "Then we keep it secret," Dr. Crane suggested. "Secrets have a way of coming out," Marcus replied, "especially in a fortress filled with people I can no longer trust." He looked at Alara, and his expression softened slightly. "But the doctor is right about one thing. You are not just a servant. You are a living piece of history, and you are in danger." "I have been in danger my whole life," Alara said quietly. "This is nothing new. This is different," Marcus countered. "For you were invisible. Now you are marked. Now you matter. That makes you a target for anyone who wants to hurt me." "Then teach me to fight," Alara said, the words coming out before she could stop them. "If I am going to be a target, I will not be a helpless one." Marcus studied her for a long moment, then a slight smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. It was the first time she had seen him smile, and it transformed his harsh features into something almost warm. All right, he said. Training starts this afternoon. Dr. Crane cleared his throat. Your Majesty, there is one more thing. The mark itself. It is not just a symbol. It is a conduit. A conduit for what? For power. The mark connects you, he said, gesturing between Marcus and Alara. Your strength, your magic, your very life force are now linked. If she is in danger, you will feel it. If she calls, you will answer. The bond works both ways. Marcus absorbed this information without visible reaction. Anything else I should know? The bond can grow stronger over time, the doctor said carefully, especially if there is emotional connection. Trust, partnership. He paused, or something deeper. The implication hung in the air. Marcus did not acknowledge it. Thank you, Silas. You are dismissed, and remember not a word. After the doctor left, Marcus turned to Alara. Get dressed. Meet me in the east courtyard in 1 hour. Wear something you can move in. What about Aurora? She will be guarded by my most trusted soldiers. No one will touch her. Alara wanted to argue, but something in Marcus's expression stopped her. He was not just a king giving orders. He was a father trying to protect his child by protecting the woman who saved her. 1 hour, she agreed. Marcus left through the connecting door. Alara heard him barking orders in the next room, his voice commanding and absolute. This was the king the world knew. The wolf of the north. Brutal, unforgiving, unstoppable. But she had seen the other side. The father who cried. The man who prepared food with his own hands. The leader who was willing to trust an Omega with no past because the magic had chosen her. Servants brought clothes. Not servant rags, but fine wool pants, a fitted shirt, leather boots that actually fit. When Alara looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The silver hair, usually hidden under ash and grime, now shone clean and bright. The violet eyes looked back at her with a mixture of fear and determination. She looked like someone who mattered. The east courtyard was a training ground 200 feet square surrounded by high walls. Weapons racks lined the edges. Training dummies stood like silent sentinels. The ground was packed earth frozen solid. Marcus was already there, stripped down to a sleeveless shirt despite the cold. His arms were corded with muscle, his chest broad and scarred. He was not just strong. He was built for war. He tossed her a wooden practice sword. Catch. Laura caught it reflexively. It was heavier than she expected. First lesson, Marcus said, picking up his own practice sword. Everyone who wants to hurt you will assume you are weak because you are Omega. Small, young, female. Use that. Let them underestimate you. He moved toward her, not attacking, just closing the distance. Show me your stance. Alara held the sword the way she had seen guards hold theirs. Marcus circled her, adjusting her grip, her feet, her shoulders. His hands were firm but not rough, each touch precise. Better, he said. Now when someone attacks you, do not try to match their strength. You redirect it. Use their momentum against them. He demonstrated moving through a series of defensive techniques. Then he had Alara try. She was clumsy at first, unused to the weight of the weapon, but Marcus was patient. He corrected her form, showed her again, waited while she practiced. Hours passed. Alara's arms burned. Sweat dripped down her back, despite the cold. But she did not ask to stop. Good, Marcus said finally. You learn fast. I have to. Alara replied, lowering the practice sword. You said it yourself, I am a target now. Marcus set his own sword down and approached her. You are more than that. His voice was quieter now, more personal. You are the reason Aurora is alive. That makes you family whether you want it or not. The word hit Alara like a physical blow. Family. She had never had one, never even hoped for one. I do not know how to be family, she admitted. Neither do I, Marcus said. Not anymore. But we will figure it out. A bell rang in the distance, signaling the evening meal. Marcus looked toward the main fortress, then back at Alara. There is a formal dinner tonight. The council wants to meet you. I would prefer to delay it, but they are insisting. What should I say? As little as possible, Marcus advised. Let me do the talking. Just stand there and look mysterious. Despite everything, Alara almost smiled. I can do mysterious. That night, Alara wore a dress for the first time in her life. It was deep blue, simple, but elegant, with long sleeves that covered the mark. Servants had tried to style her silver hair, but she refused. She braided it herself the way she always had, practical and out of the way. Marcus came to escort her personally. He wore formal attire, black and gold, the colors of his house. A silver circlet sat on his head, the only concession to his crown. You look presentable, he said. So do you, Alara replied. Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, maybe, or respect. Ready, no. But let us go anyway. The great hall was enormous, capable of seating 300 people. Tonight, only 50 were present. The inner council, alphas from allied packs, military commanders, advisors. All of them turned to watch as Marcus entered with Alara on his arm. The whispers started immediately. Who is she? Why is she here? Is that the girl who found the princess? Marcus led Alara forward to the head table, seating her to his right, the position of highest honor. A statement to everyone watching. She is protected. She is important. Challenge her and you challenge me. The meal began. Course after course of rich food. Alara ate sparingly, aware of every eye on her. Marcus kept up a steady stream of small talk with the council members, deflecting questions about Alara with practiced ease. Then halfway through the meal, an older woman in expensive furs leaned forward. Lady Bridget Thorne, one of the Northern Territory leaders. Your Majesty, she said, her voice carrying across the table, we are all grateful that the princess has been returned safely. But we must ask, what is the role of this girl? She gestured at Alara with a jeweled hand. Surely a servant should not be seated at the head table. The room went silent. Marcus set down his wineglass slowly, deliberately. His expression did not change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Alara saved my daughter's life, he said, his voice quiet but laced with warning. She found Aurora dying in a blizzard and brought her home at great personal risk. That earns her a seat wherever I damn well please. Lady Thorne had the sense to look uncomfortable. Of course, Your Majesty, I meant no disrespect. Then choose your words more carefully, Marcus said. Alara is under my personal protection. Anyone who disrespects her disrespects me. The message was clear. The council members went back to their meals subdued. But Alara saw the looks, the calculation in some eyes, the resentment in others. These people did not want her here. Some because they genuinely believed she did not belong. Others because her presence disrupted whatever plans they had been making. After dinner, Marcus walked Alara back to her chambers. The halls were dark, lit only by torches every 20 feet. You made enemies tonight, Marcus said. I made enemies the moment I picked up Aurora, Alara replied. Tonight just made it official. They reached her door. Marcus paused, his hand on the frame, blocking her path without actually touching her. I meant what I said at dinner. You are under my protection. But I need you to be careful. Watch who you trust. Listen more than you speak. And if anything feels wrong, anything at all, you come to me immediately. Understood. Understood, Alara said. Marcus looked like he wanted to say more. His hand lifted as if he might touch her face, then dropped. Good night, Alara. Good night, Your Majesty. Marcus, he corrected. When it is just us, call me Marcus. He left before she could respond. Inside her chambers, Aurora was sleeping peacefully in a cradle that had been brought in. A guard stood watch inside the room and two more flanked the door outside. Alara changed into a sleeping shift and climbed into the massive bed. But sleep would not come. Her mind raced with everything that had happened. The mark, the bloodline, the training, the dinner. She thought about Marcus's hand almost touching her face, about the way he had defended her at dinner, about the connection growing between them built on shared purpose and a magic neither of them fully understood. The days that followed fell into a rhythm. Mornings with Marcus in the training yard, her body growing stronger, her reflexes sharper. Afternoons with Aurora, who was thriving under constant care and warmth. The baby was growing, her golden eyes bright and aware, her tiny hands reaching for Alara's face whenever she came near. Evenings were for council meetings where Alara sat silent beside Marcus, learning the politics of power. She watched how he navigated the competing interests of the various pack leaders, how he balanced strength with diplomacy, how he never showed weakness, never showed doubt, even when she could feel through the bond that he was uncertain. The bond itself was changing, growing. What had started as a warm presence in the back of her awareness was becoming something more. She could feel Marcus's emotions now, especially the strong ones. His anger during a difficult negotiation, his joy when Aurora laughed for the first time, his fear late at night when he thought about losing his daughter again. And she knew he could feel her too, the way his eyes would find her across a crowded room when she felt overwhelmed. The way he would appear at her door when nightmares woke her, claiming he was just checking on the guards but staying to talk until she felt safe again. They were becoming something. Partners, friends, maybe more, though neither of them spoke of it. On day 10, Marcus's investigation team returned from the Forbidden Forest. They brought the basket, the blue blanket, and tracks. Multiple sets leading away from the oak tree toward the northern border. Professional, the lead tracker reported to Marcus in the war room. Alara was there standing beside his chair. At least 3 people. They knew how to hide their trail. We lost them at the river. Marcus studied the basket, his jaw tight. This was planned, carefully. Someone wanted Aurora dead, but they wanted it to look like an accident. A baby lost in a storm. No proof, no trail leading back to them. The Pureblood Council, one of his advisors, suggested. They have been pushing against your reforms for years. Opening Omega rights, allowing Silver Moon descendants to exist. They see it as corruption of the old ways. Marcus's hand tightened on the arm of his chair. I want surveillance on all council members, financial records, communications, everything. Your Majesty, another advisor said carefully, if you move against the council without proof, you risk civil war. They control half the trade routes in the north. 6 Alpha territories answer to them. Then we get proof, Marcus said. He looked at Alara. If they wanted Aurora dead, they will try again. And now they know about you, about the mark. They will see you as an even bigger threat. That night, day 13 in the ice fortress, the vision came. Alara had fallen into a deep sleep, exhausted from hours of combat training. The dream started softly. She was floating, a spirit without form soaring over a landscape of dead pines and ice-covered rocks. The moon above was full and red bleeding light across the frozen world. Something pulled her north, an invisible thread tugging at her consciousness. She descended toward a mountain shaped like a skull, its peak split like a broken crown. At its base, a cave entrance yawned open, exhaling sulfur and darkness. Alara entered. The smell hit her first. Old blood. Decay. The sour stench of dark magic left to fester. Green flames burned in sconces along the walls, casting sick light across stone that wept with moisture. In the center of a natural chamber, she saw them. An altar of black stone carved with symbols that hurt to look at. On its surface, a map of the ice fortress. And arranged around the map, 3 wax dolls. One tall and broad, wearing a crude crown. One small, wrapped in blue cloth. One thin with silver hair. Marcus, Aurora, herself. 5 figures in dark robes surrounded the altar. 4 stood with heads bowed. The 5th stood at the head hood thrown back, face illuminated by the green fire. Elder Moira Ashwood. Alara knew her by reputation. 62 years old, a member of the Pureblood Council. One of the 6 Alpha leaders who controlled most of the northern trade routes. She had gray hair cut short like a helmet, a face carved by battle scars and eyes that burned with fanatic conviction. Moira lifted a ceremonial dagger, black metal, that seemed to drink the light. She held it over the doll representing Alara. The impure servant bleeds at the new moon. Moira intoned, her voice echoing off the cave walls. 3 days, 3 nights. The silver moon blood will open the shadow portal, and with the power of the corrupted ancestors, we will take what is rightfully ours. One of the robed figures spoke, voice muffled by fabric. What of the king? He will come for her. Let him come, Moira snarled. The moment he steps through the portal, the iron gate falls. We will have the girl, the child, and Marcus Blackthorn trapped like the beast he is. Another figure stepped forward, and Alara's blood ran cold. Even through the robe, she recognized the movement, the posture, the voice when she spoke. And what of me, sister Helena Blackthorn? The queen everyone thought was dead. You will have what we promised, Moira replied. The throne. Once Marcus and his bastard are dead, you return as the grieving widow, the hero who escaped her captors. You will rule as regent until we install a proper heir. And the silver moon abomination. Dead by dawn, Moira said. Her blood will fuel the ritual. The old powers will return, and the natural order will be restored. Helena pulled back her hood, revealing a face hardened by 3 months of whatever had transpired. You swore you would not harm Aurora. She is not Aurora, Moira spat. She is the spawn of Marcus and that silver moon whore. Your husband betrayed you with Sage Moon Whisper. This child is proof of his infidelity. She deserves to die. Alara's mind reeled. Aurora was not Helena's daughter. She was the child of Marcus and a woman named Sage. A silver moon woman, Helena's face twisted with pain and rage. I know what she is, but she is still just a baby. She is an abomination, Moira repeated. As is the servant girl. Both must die. And what of the other children, Helena asked. The 12 we took from the border packs, Leverage Moira said coldly. If Marcus somehow escapes the trap, we threaten to kill them one by one. He will surrender rather than watch children die. Moira plunged the dagger into Alara's doll. Pain exploded through Alara's wrist. The mark burned like it was being branded again. She screamed, but no sound came out in the vision. She was a ghost, helpless to do anything but watch. Soon, little silver moon, Moira smiled. Soon you will serve your true purpose, to die so the old powers can return. The vision shattered. Alara woke screaming, sitting bolt upright in bed. The mark on her wrist was glowing red-hot smoke rising from her skin. The pain was blinding, all-consuming. The connecting door crashed open. Marcus burst through shirtless, a sword in his hand, eyes wild and searching for the threat. What happened? Who attacked Alara could not speak. She clutched her wrist, tears streaming down her face. Marcus saw the mark, saw the smoke, and was at her side in an instant. He grabbed her arm, and the moment his skin touched hers, the pain vanished. The glow faded, the smoke dissipated, but the mark remained angry and red, as if it had been burned anew. A vision, Alara gasped. I saw her. I know where she is. And Marcus, I know about Helena, about Aurora. Tell me everything, Marcus said, his voice deadly calm. Every word. So Alara told him. The Skull Mountain, the cave, the altar with the dolls, Moira Ashwood and her ritual. The plan to use Alara's blood to open a shadow portal, the Iron Gate trap, and then she told him about Helena, about the betrayal, about Sage Moonwhisper, about the 12 children held hostage. When she finished, Marcus's expression was carved from stone. Dangerous, deadly. Sage, he said quietly. I loved her. 3 years ago, before Helena, I thought I would make her my queen. But she was Silver Moon, and the council would not allow it. They forced me to marry Helena for political alliance. Sage died giving birth to Aurora. Helena raised her as her own, and I thought for a time that Helena had forgiven me. But she never did, Alara said. No, Marcus agreed. She let her hatred grow for 3 years. And when the council approached her, offered her a chance for revenge and power, she took it. He stood pacing. The Wailing Caverns, Skull Mountain, 15 miles north in neutral territory. If Moira is there, we attack. No, Alara said, surprising herself with the force of the word. They expect that. I saw the entrance. Magical explosives rigged along the walls. If you march in with an army, you will kill your men and warn her you are coming. She will escape through the back tunnels, and she will kill those 12 children. Then what do you suggest? We give her what she wants. Alara met his eyes. Me? Absolutely not. Marcus growled. Over my dead body. She needs my blood for the ritual, Alara pressed on. Armon. She needs me alive until the new moon. That is 3 days away. She thinks I am just a lucky servant. She does not know I have awakened the magic. She does not know I have been training. She stood walking toward him. We announce an outing. The king's favorite and the princess travel to the moon temple to give thanks. A known route, light security. When her forces attack to capture me, we are ready. Seemingly light security. Marcus corrected his tactical mind, already working despite his reluctance. My best soldiers disguised as servants. Warriors hidden in the escort wagons. And you disguised as the driver, Alara added. When they take me to the cave, you follow using the bond. You will always know where I am. Marcus closed the distance between them in 2 strides. His hands gripped her shoulders, not hard but firm. If they hurt you, if they touch one hair on your head, they will not, Alara promised, with more confidence than she felt. Because you will be right behind me, and when we get there, I will free those children. I will make sure every one of them gets home. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. His amber eyes searched her face, looking for doubt, for fear. He found determination. You are either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish, he said quietly. Can I not be both, despite everything? Marcus almost smiled. He pulled her into an embrace, sudden and fierce. His arms wrapped around her, and Alara felt the rapid beat of his heart against her cheek. If this goes wrong, he whispered into her hair, if I lose you too, I will burn the world until there is nothing left but ash. Then we make sure it does not go wrong, Alara replied. They spent the next 3 days preparing. Marcus selected his 20 best soldiers, men and women, who had proven their loyalty and blood. They were fitted with servant disguises, weapons hidden beneath simple clothes. 4 wagons were prepared, each one containing a false bottom where armed warriors could hide. Alara practiced with the silver light, learning to call it without the trigger of fear or anger. Marcus worked with her for hours in the training yard, teaching her to summon the power through will alone. Control it, he instructed, standing behind her, his hands on her shoulders. Do not let it control you. Feel the magic in your blood. It is part of you. Command it. Alara closed her eyes, reaching for that place inside where the light lived. It was like touching the sun, hot and bright and vast. She pulled a thread of it up through her chest, down her arm, and into her hand. Silver light bloomed in her palms, soft and steady. Not an explosion, a controlled flame. Good, Marcus murmured, his breath warm against her ear. Now make it grow. Alara fed more power into the light. It expanded, growing from a candle flame to a torch, then to a bonfire. The entire training yard was bathed in silver radiance. Now release it, Marcus said. Alara let go. The light dispersed harmlessly into the air, fading like morning mist. You are ready, Marcus said, and the pride in his voice made something warm bloom in Alara's chest. On the night before the mission, Marcus came to her chambers, not through the connecting door, but through the main entrance, knocking formally. Come in, Alara said. He entered, and she saw he was carrying something. A wooden box, old and ornate. This belonged to Sage, he said quietly. I want you to have it. Alara opened the box. Inside was a silver pendant on a delicate chain, a crescent moon cradling a star. It was her mother's, Marcus explained, passed down through the silver moon line for generations. Sage wore it every day. When she died, I could not bring myself to let it go. But I think she would want you to have it. One silver moon to another. Alara lifted the pendant, feeling its weight. It was warm, humming with faint magic. Thank you, she whispered. Marcus fastened it around her neck. His fingers brushed her skin, sending shivers down her spine. When he stepped back, his eyes were intense. Come back to me, he said. To us. Aurora needs you, and I... He paused, struggling with words he had not spoken in years. I need you. Alara reached up and touched his face. I will come back. I promise, but trust. Marcus caught her hand, pressing it against his cheek. Then he leaned down and kissed her forehead. Gentle, reverent. When this is over, he said softly, when Aurora is safe and the traitors are dealt with, I would like to court you properly. If you will have me, I am an Omega with no family, Alara said. You are Silver Moon royalty, Marcus corrected. And more importantly, you are the woman who saved my daughter. The woman who makes me believe in tomorrow again. He squeezed her hand. So yes or no? Yes, Alara smiled. Yes, I will let you court me. On the morning of day 16, the carriage procession departed. Alara wore white furs over light chainmail. A silver dagger was strapped to her thigh, hidden beneath her skirts. Sage's pendant hung around her neck, tucked beneath her dress. In the basket beside her sat an enchanted doll created by the court witch to have Aurora's weight and scent. It would hold the illusion for 1 hour. The real Aurora remained in the fortress, locked in the deepest vault, with 50 guards and enough supplies to survive a siege. Marcus sat on the driver's bench, unrecognizable under the heavy cloak and hat that shadowed his face. But Alara could feel him through the bond, a constant presence at the edge of her awareness. The road to the Moon Temple took them through Pine Valley, a narrow pass between two mountains. The perfect place for an ambush. They were 2 hours into the journey when it happened. The explosion shook the ground. Trees fell across the road, blocking the path forward and back. Battle cries split the air. For the pure blood, for the true order, figures in white camouflage emerged from the forest, at least 30 of them. Crossbow bolts flew. One struck the carriage door, another buried itself in the driver's bench, inches from where Marcus sat. He leaped down, drawing a concealed sword, and took down the first attacker in one brutal strike. The hidden soldiers poured from the wagons, and suddenly the ambush became a battle. Alara stayed in the carriage as planned. She heard the clash of steel, the screams of the wounded, the snarls of wolves as some fighters shifted form. Then rough hands grabbed her, dragging her from the wreckage. She fought, making it look convincing, but not effective. Let them think she was helpless. A sack went over her head. Her hands were bound. She was thrown over a horse's saddle, and they were moving, racing away from the battle. Through the bond, she felt Marcus's rage, his desperate need to follow, but he held back, letting them take her, trusting the plan. I am here, Alara thought, pushing the message through the bond. I am going, follow me. She felt his response, not words, but emotion. Fear, fury, and beneath it all, trust. The ride lasted 20 minutes. Alara counted every jarring step, mapping the turns in her mind. Then the horse stopped. She was pulled down and dragged forward. The temperature dropped suddenly. They had entered the cave. The sack was ripped from her head. Alara stood in the chamber from her vision. The green flames, the black altar, and there at the center of it all stood Moira Ashwood. The elder was smaller than she had seemed in the vision, but no less terrifying. Her gray eyes fixed on Alara with the intensity of a predator sizing up prey. The little servant who thought she could be queen, Moira sneered, circling Alara like a wolf. You have no idea what you are, do you? No idea what that mark really means. I know enough, Alara said, keeping her voice steady. Do you? Moira stopped in front of her, so close Alara could smell the rot on her breath. Do you know that 200 years ago your ancestors slaughtered my family? The Silver Moon House declared us unworthy, said our bloodline was tainted because we refused to bow to their spiritual authority. The Great Purge went both ways, Alara said. You destroyed them for standing in your way. We destroyed abominations, Moira spat. Your precious ancestors held themselves above us, claimed they spoke for the moon goddess. They were frauds, charlatans. And when we were finally strong enough, we cleansed the world of them. She leaned closer, or so we thought. But one survived, hidden, protected. And 18 years ago, I found her, your mother, Lyanna. I killed her myself, slowly. She begged for mercy, begged me to spare her infant daughter. Alara's blood ran cold. I should have killed you too, Moira continued. But my mate stopped me, said it was not worth the risk drawing attention to a dead bloodline. So we left you in a basket at a pack house. Figured you would die of neglect or grow up worthless. She laughed bitterly. And look at you now, marked by the king, proof that the silver moon corruption still infects this world. You are the corruption, Alara said. You and your council. You do not care about purity. You care about power, about control, and you care about what Moira mocked. Love, justice. Those are luxuries for the weak. She gestured to her followers. Bring the child. Alara's heart stopped. No, they could not have Aurora. That was not part of the plan. A robed figure brought forward the basket from the carriage, placed it on the altar. Moira reached in to pull out the baby. Her hand passed through empty air. The doll dissolved into a cloud of black crows that exploded from the basket, cawing and shrieking as they filled the cave. Moira screamed, stumbling backward, arms raised against the onslaught of wings and beaks. A trick, she roared, batting at the birds. Where is the real one? Safe, Alara said, and the ropes binding her hands fell away. She had cut them minutes ago with the hidden dagger. Far away from traitors like you. She dropped the white fur cloak, revealing the armor beneath and the fighting stance Marcus had drilled into her for hours. Moira's eyes widened. Then she smiled, cold and cruel. It does not matter. The child was a bonus. Your blood is the key. She snapped her fingers. Kill her, but save the blood. 5 guards advanced, weapons drawn. Now Alara screamed the word mental and physical at once. The cave entrance exploded. Marcus entered first, but not as a man, as a wolf. Massive 15 feet at the shoulder, black fur, rippling with muscle, eyes blazing amber fire. Behind him poured the elite soldiers, 20 trained killers in perfect formation. Chaos erupted. Steel clashed. Wolves snarled. The green flames flickered and danced with the violence. Alara drew her dagger and engaged the nearest guard. He was bigger, stronger, but she was faster. She ducked his swing, slashed his tendon, and moved past him before he hit the ground. Everything Marcus had taught her came flooding back. Use their momentum. Stay light. Strike fast. Marcus tore through Moira's forces like they were made of paper. Blood sprayed. Bodies fell. He was magnificent and terrible, a force of nature unleashed. But Moira was not finished. She ran to the altar, pulling a lever hidden in the stone. With a grinding roar, an iron gate fell from the ceiling, separating the chamber. Marcus was on one side, Alara on the other, with Moira and her remaining guards. The gate was reinforced with dark magic glowing with purple runes. Marcus threw himself against it, but it did not budge. You think you have won, Moira hissed at him through the bars. You will watch her die, AlphaKing. Watch her bleed while you stand helpless. Then another figure stepped from the shadows. A woman in dark robes pulling back her hood. Helena. Marcus froze, staring at his wife, his queen, the woman he thought had been dead for 3 months. Hello, husband, Helena said coldly. Surprised you, Marcus breathed. All this time, Helena confirmed. Did you really think I could forgive you? You forced me into a political marriage, kept me as your queen while you loved another, made me raise her bastard as my own. I never lied to you, Marcus said. I told you about Sage before we married, and I told myself I could live with it. Helena spat. That I could be enough. But then she died and you grieved her like you never grieved anything. You loved her more than you ever loved me. Aurora is innocent in this, Marcus said. She is a child. She is proof of my humiliation. Helena countered. Every time I looked at her golden eyes, I saw Sage. Saw your betrayal. She turned to Moira. Do it. Kill the silver moon whore. Let him watch. Moira smiled and pulled out her ceremonial dagger. She moved toward Alara. Alara met her eyes. I have one more trick. She closed her eyes and reached for the light. Not with her hands, with her soul. She pulled at the silver power in her blood, the ancient magic of the Silver Moon House that had survived 2 centuries of persecution. When she opened her eyes, the entire cave turned silver. It was not daylight, it was moonlight. Pure, cold, absolute. It exploded from Alara in concentric waves, a tsunami of radiance that turned night into something beyond day. The guards were thrown backward, blinded, their weapons clattering to the stone floor. Moira raised her arms, shielding her face, but the light was everywhere, inescapable. Alara did not walk. She floated, lifted by the magic. Her form began to shimmer, becoming translucent. Not human anymore, not solid, spirit transformation. Her body dissolved into silver mist. Moira's dagger slashed through empty air. The mist swirled, reformed behind the elder as something else. A wolf made of starlight, 20 feet tall, translucent, ethereal. The cave walls were visible through its body, but the teeth were real. The eyes were real, and they fixed on Moira with ancient judgment. "What are you?" Moira whispered, backing away. "Justice," the spirit wolf said, and Alara's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. The wolf lunged, but it did not bite flesh. It bit magic. Its teeth sank into Moira's shoulder, where the dark power she had stolen and corrupted was anchored to her soul. The wolf pulled, tearing at the source, burning the corruption with pure silver light. Moira screamed, not from physical pain, but from loss. The power that had sustained her for decades, the stolen magic from rituals and sacrifices, was being ripped away. She aged before their eyes. Gray hair turned white and sparse. Skin wrinkled and sagged. Her strong frame bent and weakened. The magic had been keeping her alive, keeping her strong. Without it, she was just an old woman who had lived far beyond her natural years. The spirit wolf released her. Moira collapsed to the cave floor, gasping, suddenly fragile. The iron gate sustained by her power crumbled to rust. Marcus entered, shifting back to human form. He did not go to Moira. He looked at Helena. "I never wanted this," he said quietly. "I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did," Helena replied, tears streaming down her face. "You broke me, Marcus, and I let it turn me into this." "Where are the children?" Alara asked, returning to human form. Her legs shook with exhaustion, but she stayed upright. "The 12 hostages. Where are they?" Helena looked at her, then at Marcus. "In the lower caverns. Alive. Unharmed." She swallowed hard. "I could not let Moira hurt them. I am many things, but I am not a monster." "Show me," Alara demanded. Helena led them through a side passage down carved stone steps slick with moisture. The air grew colder, and then they heard it. Children's voices, frightened, calling out. The chamber at the bottom held iron cages. Inside were 12 children ranging from 5 to 12 years old. Dirty, scared, but alive. Ilara's silver light flared and the locks on the cages melted. The doors swung open. "You are safe now," she told them, kneeling so she was at their eye level. "We are taking you home." A little girl no more than 6 ran forward and threw her arms around Ilara's neck. "Thank you," she sobbed. "Thank you." One by one, Marcus's soldiers gathered the children, wrapping them in warm cloaks, offering food and water. They were gentle, these hardened warriors, careful with their precious cargo. "What happens now?" Helena asked quietly. Marcus looked at his wife, the woman who had betrayed him, who had helped kidnap his daughter, who had plotted with his enemies. "Now you face justice," he said. "You, Moira, and every member of the council who was involved." Moira tried to crawl away, but Marcus's boot came down on her wrist. Not hard enough to break, but enough to stop her. "Winter always returns," she mumbled, delirious with shock. "The old order will rise." Marcus looked down at her with something like pity. "And spring always wins." He gestured to his soldiers. "Take them both. They will stand trial for treason, kidnapping, attempted murder, and conspiracy against the crown." The journey back to the ice fortress took 2 days. Moira and Helena rode in a prisoner wagon bound in iron and guarded by 20 soldiers. The 12 children rode in comfort, wrapped in furs, eating hot food, slowly beginning to believe they were truly safe. Alara rode in the lead carriage with Marcus and Aurora, who had been brought from the vault to reunite with her father. The baby had grown in the 16 days since Alara found her. She was stronger, healthier, and when she saw Alara, she reached out with both hands and laughed. Mama, Aurora said, her first real word. Marcus looked at Alara, his expression soft. She knows who saved her. Alara held Aurora close, breathing in her baby scent. We saved each other, she murmured. When they arrived at the fortress, the courtyard was packed. News had spread. The princess was safe. The traitors were captured. The children were coming home. Families waited, desperate, hopeful. And as the wagons rolled in, as the children were helped down, the screams of joy echoed off the stone walls. Mothers fell to their knees, clutching their children. Fathers wept openly. Siblings clung to each other. It was chaos and love and relief all mixed together. Alara stood beside Marcus, watching. This was what they had fought for. Not revenge, not power. This. Families whole again. You did this, Marcus said quietly, taking her hand. You saved them all. We did this, Alara corrected. 10 days later, the Grand Assembly convened. The Great Hall was transformed, seating for 200 witnesses. Representatives from 15 packs across the Northern Territories. And at the head, a raised platform where Alliance Supreme Elder Aldrich sat flanked by Marcus and his council. Aldrich was 78, white-bearded, with eyes that had seen 7 decades of pack politics. He carried the authority of the Continental Alliance, the governing body that oversaw disputes between territories. Marcus had requested his presence for the trial. What happened here affected more than just the ice fortress. It affected the entire northern region. Bring in the accused, Aldrich commanded. Moira Ashwood was brought in first, shackled in silver chains. She looked ancient now, frail, but her eyes still burned with defiance. Behind her came Helena, shackled in iron. And then, one by one, 4 other members of the Pureblood Council who had been arrested in the investigation. Caught by financial records, communications, witness testimony. The charges were read: treason, conspiracy to commit murder, kidnapping, corruption, embezzlement of $4.2 million from PAC community funds over 5 years. The evidence was presented systematically. Marcus had spent 10 days building an airtight case. First came the financial records. Spreadsheets showing money flowing from PAC treasuries to council members' personal accounts. Trade routes manipulated to favor council-controlled companies. Bribes paid, contracts rigged. Second came the physical evidence. Surveillance equipment found hidden in the fortress. Communication logs between council members planning the coup. The ritual altar photographed and brought as evidence. The iron cages where children had been held. Third came witness testimony. Alara was called first. She walked to the center of the hall, aware of 200 pairs of eyes on her. She wore a simple dress of silver blue. The mark on her wrist was visible, glowing softly in the torchlight. State your name for the record, Aldrich said. Alara Morgan, of the House of Silver Moon. A murmur ran through the crowd. Silver Moon, the extinct bloodline, proof standing before them. Tell us what happened, Aldrich said gently. From the beginning. So Alara told her story, finding Aurora in the snow. The mark choosing her, the vision that led her to the cave, the trap that saved the children. She spoke clearly without embellishment, letting the facts speak for themselves. When she finished, the hall was silent. Did Elder Moira confess to killing your mother? Aldrich asked. Yes, Alara said. She told me she found Liana Silvermoon 18 years ago and killed her, left me to die of neglect. She considered the Silver Moon line an abomination that needed to be erased. Moira spat on the floor. They were abominations, spiritual charlatans who claimed divine authority. We did the world a service. You committed genocide, Marcus said, his voice cutting across the hall. You wiped out an entire bloodline because they threatened your power. The next witness was one of the freed children, a 10-year-old boy named Thomas from a pack 200 miles south. He described being taken from his home in the night, held in the caves for 6 weeks, told he would be killed if King Marcus did not surrender. They said they would cut us into pieces, Thomas said, his small voice shaking. Send one piece at a time to our families, until the king gave up. More witnesses followed. The families of the children, the soldiers who had found evidence in council estates, the castle witch who had been threatened by Helena to keep silent about ritual components. Then Helena was called to testify. She walked to the center, slowly, her chains clanking. She looked at Marcus, at Alara, at the crowd. I will not deny what I did, she said. I helped Elder Moira. I kidnapped Aurora and left her in the forest to die. I wanted revenge on my husband for loving another. I wanted the throne without the humiliation. She paused, tears on her face. But I want you all to know I could not kill the children. When Moira ordered their deaths, I refused. That is why she kept them alive. She needed me, and I made it a condition of my cooperation. That does not absolve you, Aldrich said. I know, Helena replied. I am guilty. I deserve punishment. I only wanted to say that some part of me, some small part, was still human enough to protect the innocent. The final witness was surprising. Garrett Ashwood, Moira's own son, a young alpha of 25. He brought documents, internal council communications that proved the conspiracy went back 5 years. Plans to destabilize Marcus's rule, discussions of assassination, financial crimes. Why are you testifying against your mother? Aldrich asked. Because what she did was wrong, Garrett said simply. I was taught to honor tradition. But tradition without honor is just tyranny. She killed children's families, stole from her own people, tried to murder a baby. I cannot stand with that. The trial lasted 6 hours. At the end, Aldrich stood. The evidence is overwhelming. The testimonies are consistent. The crimes are proven beyond doubt. He looked at Moira. Elder Moira Ashwood, you are found guilty on all charges. For crimes against the crown, against the innocent, and against the basic laws that govern Pax Society, you are sentenced to life imprisonment in a silver-reinforced cell. You will live out your remaining days stripped of power, of freedom, of the authority you abused. Moira screamed, struggling against her chains. This is not over. The old ways will return. You cannot stop the tide of history. History has already moved past you, Aldrich said. You are a relic of a darker time. He turned to Helena. Queen Helena Blackthorne, you are found guilty of treason, conspiracy, and kidnapping. However, your testimony and your protection of the hostages are noted as mitigating factors. You are sentenced to permanent exile. You will be stripped of your title, escorted to the Eastern Territories, and forbidden to return to the North for the remainder of your life. Any attempt to return will result in immediate execution. Helena bowed her head. I understand. The 4 council members received similar sentences. Exile, asset seizure, public humiliation. But Aldrich was not done. This assembly also acknowledges the systematic corruption that allowed these crimes to occur. Effective immediately, the Pureblood Council is dissolved. A new oversight body will be formed with representatives from all packs, including Omegas. Gasps rippled through the hall. Furthermore, the Alliance ratifies the Omega Protection Act proposed by King Marcus. All wolves, regardless of designation, have equal standing before the law. Any pack found discriminating will face Alliance sanctions. He looked at Alara. And finally, this assembly recognizes Alara Morgan as the last surviving member of the House of Silver Moon. Her bloodline is no longer outlawed. She is afforded all rights and protections of nobility. The hall erupted in applause. Not everyone was happy, but even those who had opposed change recognized the tide had turned. Marcus stood and took Alara's hand. He raised it high, the mark visible to all. The magic chose her, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. And so do I. 1 week later, on a cold morning under clear blue skies, Alara was crowned Queen of the North. The ceremony took place in the Winter Gardens under the open sky, where moonlight and sunlight could both touch the proceedings. 200 guests stood among snow-covered trees, strung with silver bells that chimed in the wind. Aurora sat in a place of honor held by Marcus's most trusted soldier. The 12 freed children formed a ceremonial honor guard, dressed in white and silver, carrying banners of the House of Blackthorne, and for the first time in 2 centuries, the House of Silver Moon. Alara wore a gown of moonlight silk woven by the finest craftsmen in the territory. Her silver hair hung loose, crowned with a tiara of crystal and silver light enough to be forgotten, strong enough to be unbreakable. Elder Aldrich performed the ceremony. Alara of the Silver Moon, he said, his voice ancient and sure. You came to us as a servant. You leave as a queen, not by blood alone, though your lineage is ancient and pure. Not by magic alone, though you carry the mark of destiny. But by spirit, by courage, by love that asked nothing in return but gave everything. He placed the crown on her head. The people chose you. The king chose you. The magic chose you. And now, before all witnesses, I crown you Queen Alara, guardian of the North, protector of the innocent mother of the Silver Moon. The crowd erupted in howls and cheers. The children threw winter flowers, white and silver, until the ground was carpeted in petals. Marcus stepped forward. He wore his formal regalia, black and gold, a true crown of dark metal on his head. But his eyes were only for Alara. My partner, he said loud enough for all to hear. My equal, my queen. He kissed her, and the bond between them flared bright enough that those with magical sight gasped. The mark on Alara's wrist glowed gold and silver, twining together like rope. When they pulled apart, Marcus smiled. That was one kiss as king. Now I would like one as Marcus. He kissed her again, softer, sweeter, and this time it was just for them. The celebration lasted 3 days. Music and food and joy. The fortress that had been a tomb for 3 months became a home again. 6 months later, Alara stood on the balcony of what were now her chambers, looking out over the mountains. Spring had come to the north. Impossible as it seemed, flowers bloomed in the snow. Green pushed through white, life returning after the longest winter. Behind her, she heard the sound of Aurora laughing. The baby, 9 months old now, was crawling across the floor at impressive speed, chasing after her father. Marcus caught her and lifted her high, making growling sounds that sent Aurora into fits of giggles. Careful, Alara said, smiling. You will make her think you are a real monster. Too late, Marcus said, nuzzling Aurora's neck. She already knows I am her monster. Alara walked to them and Marcus pulled her into the embrace. The three of them, a family forged in snow and fire. There was a soft knock and a servant entered. Your Majesty, the delegation from the Southern Pax has arrived. They wish to discuss trade agreements. I will be there shortly, Alara said. Being queen, and she had discovered, was less about crowns and more about meetings, trade routes, dispute settlements, building the infrastructure of justice that would prevent another Moira from rising. But it was good work, important work. She handed Aurora to Marcus. I will be back for dinner. You better be, Marcus said. I am making your favorite. You can cook. Alara teased. I am learning, Marcus replied. How hard can it be? The look on his face suggested he had already burned several attempts. Alara left them walking through halls that no longer felt cold. She passed servants who bowed respectfully, but also smiled. Past guards who nodded to her as an equal. Past the council chamber, where Omegas now sat beside Alphas, their voices heard for the first time. She passed a mirror and stopped. The woman looking back was no longer the girl from the lean-to. She stood straight, confident. The silver hair was no longer hidden, but worn as a crown of its own. The violet eyes were clear and sure, but she was still Alara. Still the girl who ran into a blizzard to save a dying baby. Still the servant who chose compassion over survival. Some things did not change with crowns. That evening, after the delegation had left after dinner with Marcus and Aurora, after putting the baby to bed with a lullaby in the old silver moon tongue that Alara was slowly relearning from ancient texts, she returned to the balcony. Marcus joined her, wrapping a fur around her shoulders. What are you thinking about? He asked. Alara looked up at the moon. How my mother would never believe this if I told her. Omega to queen, servant to savior. You were always a queen, Marcus said. You just needed the world to see it. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out one by one. In the nursery behind them, Aurora slept peacefully. Safe, loved, protected. In the fortress below, the 12 freed children were back with their families, growing up in a world that was slowly, carefully becoming better. In the prison far to the east, Moira sat in her silver cell, powerless, a relic of a time that would not return. And across the northern territories, Omegas stood a little taller, knowing that one of their own had proven what they always suspected. That designation did not determine destiny. That courage and compassion mattered more than birth. They tried to bury us, Alara said softly. Marcus squeezed her shoulder. They did not know you were seeds. Alara smiled. That is right. And now the whole north is in bloom. Behind them, the door opened. A servant peeked in, looking nervous. Your Majesty, I am sorry to interrupt, but there is news. From the Border Watch. What kind of news? Marcus asked. The servant hesitated. Twins. A woman gave birth in the outer villages, twin boys, and she swallowed their eyes. Your Majesty, one has golden alpha eyes, the other has silver light, like the old stories of Silver Moon. They are asking if she stopped, uncertain how to continue. If they are an omen, Alara finished. The servant nodded. Alara and Marcus looked at each other. The bond hummed between them, thoughts and feelings flowing without words. Tell them, Alara said, turning to the servant, that they are not an omen. They are a blessing, and if the mother wishes, she and her sons are welcome here. We will help her raise them in a world where both silver and gold can shine. The servant bowed and hurried away. Marcus pulled Alara closer. You know what this means? That the old magic is returning, Alara said. That what was broken is healing. And that Aurora will not be alone, Marcus added. She will have others like her. A generation born between the old world and the new. Alara touched Sage's pendant at her neck, the silver moon cradling a star. They will need guidance, she said, someone to teach them about the old ways and the new. Are you volunteering? Marcus asked with a smile. Someone has to, Alara replied, and I happen to know a thing or two about being different. They stood on the balcony as night deepened, the northern star bright above them. In the distance, wolves howled, not in mourning anymore, in song. The cold had tried to take the king's daughter. It had found the fire of a mother who refused to let go. And together with a king who learned to love again, they had brought the spring. Not the season that comes and goes, but the spring of the soul, the kind that lasts forever. Inside, Aurora stirred in her sleep. She dreamed of silver wolves and golden light, of a mother who smelled of moonlight and a father who smelled of storms, of safety and warmth and love without end. And in her dreams, she was not alone. Two boys with mismatched eyes stood beside her, one silver, one gold, the future of a world reborn. The story of the Omega who became queen would be told for generations. How she walked into a storm and came out with a princess. How she stood against the darkness with nothing but light. How she proved that the strongest magic of all was the kind that lives in the heart. But for now, on this night, in this moment, Alara was simply content. She was home.